Final Fantasy VI is one of my favorite JRPGs from my childhood. We had both of the two Final Fantasy games released in the US for Super Nintendo, called Final Fantasy II and III, in North America specifically. In a lot of ways, it established the guidelines in my brain for what a Japanese RPG could be. I had airships, turn-based combat, and these epic stories with lots of different characters who all had their own distinct personalities. And of course, very iconic villains like Kefka. There have been a few RPGs that I've released recently that have been trying to capture that feeling. So let's start with Kingdoms of the Dump. Kingdoms of the Dump is very clearly attempting to capture the feeling of Super Nintendo RPGs, and they've done it in this really great way. The world is garbage. I don't mean our world, I mean the world in this game, but also maybe our world a little bit sometimes. This game covers everything I was talking about: turn-based combat, Mode 7, airships, and it does it all within a unique setting, which is a dump. This was made by a group of people who are very clearly passionate about those classic JRPGs, and it shows throughout the game. Each different aspect comes together in a way that just injects pure nostalgia into my veins, whether it's the retro-looking pixel art style, the combat. When I saw this one for the first time years back, I knew it was a game that I needed to keep track of. Unfortunately, this is one that is flying pretty heavily under the radar. It's not being covered extensively by any of the major games media outlets. The few places that did cover it have said that it does have some problems with bugs, could use a bit more polish. One of them even saying that this could be one of the best indie RPGs out there if it wasn't for some technical issues. That being said, even if you wait a couple of months for them to iron all of that out, which I'm sure they will over time, I think this game seems very much like a love letter to all of those games from the Super Nintendo era. So if that's something you've been looking for, you want that kick of nostalgia, then you'll definitely find it in Kingdoms of the Dump. Right now, it isn't available on consoles, but you can get it on Linux, PC, and macOS through Steam. Quartet is another game that was inspired by old school JRPGs. Specifically, they described it as Final Fantasy VI for people with a job. It also has some inspirations from Octopath Traveler and the way that the game plays out. At the start of the game, various characters start out in their own stories, and eventually that all comes together. Combat is turn-based, as you would expect, and you have a turn queue that you can use to decide how you're going to engage with the enemies, and that's on the side of the screen. You have 4 characters fighting at any one time, with 4 more that can jump in mid-combat. Characters that get put into reserve regenerate their resources, so there's a strategy to the way that you use that. The Steam page also highlights exploration specifically as a way to gear out your characters, so spending time really looking around and trying to find all the different treasure chests and things like that is rewarded. The big thing with Quartet is it really nails the feeling of those games from the Super Nintendo era, which is something that it seems like it'd be pretty easy to do, but it's actually very difficult to do. Consider all the different examples there are out there who have done it completely wrong. But this time, it seems like it's been done pretty well. Quartet is a game by Something Classic Games. They're this team that put out Shadows of Adam back in 2017, so they've already proven themselves in the space with that game. This is them showing up with more experience, making something even better. You can pick up a Quartet on Switch and Steam. For me, this is the type of game that I really love highlighting because I grew up playing these sorts of games, and we've had a bit of a JRPG resurgence for the last 10 or so years that has felt really great. There are all these retro-styled indie RPGs coming out. Especially indie devs have stepped up their game and started making some really cool stuff. There are a ton of upcoming games that I've been keeping my eye on, so I'd love to do more videos on those. There's so many JRPGs from the retro era also that I'd like to highlight that don't get enough love, so hopefully you stick around for that because there are a lot more RPG recommendations coming to my channel in the future. Make sure to subscribe for that. Thanks for watching.